Hey everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. In this video we're going to be trying to speed paint up a Stormcast Eternal from that new Dominion collection set box thing. Guys, this is specifically a Vindicator. I believe it's the alpha, the important, the big boss lady. She's in charge of the squad, and I'm going to try and speed paint it. I'm going to try and do it quickly. I do think, and you might have guessed, I've been delaying doing the Eternals because they are harder to paint than the orcs, but it's time. Let's give it a go. I'm going to try and speed paint this, guys, so you will see some contrast paints in this video, and we'll try and get through it as quickly as I can. Guys, take your time though, as much, put the time and effort you want into the miniature. If you want it to look better, take a little bit more time. If you're not as fast at painting, don't worry about it. Just enjoy yourself. Personally, I enjoy getting miniatures to the table, so that's why I like to paint really, really quickly and just get an entire army done and playing games and board games and hopefully Warhammer soon. To start off with, guys, I've primed this using Army Painters. It's hard to get in front of the camera, but the color primer plate mail metal, so that's why it is all shiny silver. I have already stuck it to my hobby holder, which is just going to make it easier to hold. This thing has, accessories and stuff if you want it. It's got this handle that you can hold, so you've got better positions to hold and grip the miniature. And the only reason I don't use it is because it's on camera and it just keeps getting in the way. But if you guys aren't aware of that, there's a link in the description if you want to go and check this out. I'm also going by the same company. It's by Game Envy. I'm going to be using their Wash Wizard to hold my contrasts and stop them from getting knocked over easily on the table. I have never spilt one in this holder. And that's it, guys. Let's start painting. I'm going to begin with this NAZOREG yellow. So there might be a bit of a trigger warning here. I saw some comedy comment on the huge size of brush that I use. I am going to be using Redgrass Games size 2, their biggest brush, and that's just to quickly apply this paint. I'm going to start with trying to get this gold on. So we're going to be taking this NAZOREG yellow and just applying it. I'm going to try and do it quite thin on the flats of the armor, because that's the hardest bit to do the contrast on, that it's going to pool in random places on the flat. So you're going to try and get an even, smooth coat across every bit of metal. Working down the leg, there's a lot more dints and crevices, so the contrast is going to do its little thing here and flood into the recesses. I'm going to apply this quite quickly. There are a few bits which we are going to paint properly, and I am catching them a little bit with this yellow, but we'll tidy them up. Don't forget, we have primed this in silver, so any bits that we're going to paint properly are going to probably need a base coat of an easier to paint over colour, something lighter than this silver to work with. That's one side down. Get her chest plate as well. Lots of detail in here for the contrast to do its thing. Ah, she's armless. Do across her back as well. Around the outside of her shield. I'm going to paint in the centre of the shield properly using the old-fashioned paints, so don't worry about getting a little bit on the centre of the shield. Catch the back of the outside of the shield too. I'm going to paint up the right hand, that whole gauntlet, her elbow, and then I'm going to get a shoulder pad, trying to leave this, I don't know what this emblem is, but this face emblem, I'm not going to bother getting any contrast on that. That's going to want to be white, but again, it's primed with silver, so I'm going to have to do some work on that to get it how I want it to be. And then we'll also just do a helmet inside a neck crevice. What's this spike sun thing around the head called? That must have a name. We'll get that too. I'm trying to be a little bit careful on the hair, but once again, it is primed in silver, so I'm actually in fact, I wouldn't even worry about that, because I'm going to have to paint it a lighter colour, because I'm going to want to contrast that, and to do so, I'm going to want it not silver, unless you want her hair to look metallic, which might look cool in its own right. I'll get this shoulder pad here. I'm then going to wait for the shield to dry before I do the rest of the arm, because that shield's going to pop off, and I'm going to be in a much better position to get in there and paint just the arm. I'm going to do the same over here as well. Off camera, I'll pop this arm off and paint in the rest of the armour there. But that's looking very, very quick, very, very easy. Needs to go away and dry for a bit. There's some detailing on the spear to do as well. I think this bit's gold. Just downsizing the size of my brush now to just paint this bit in gold too. Also the bottom of the spear, the bottom of the sheath, the sleeve for a sword, and this kind of gem, and the hilt. Is that the hilt? I mean the hilt. Yeah, I think that's the hilt. Here's the pommel. Look at me doing all my sword bits. So what on absolute transformation that gold makes. It turns her from the alpha female to a random male Vindictor. Now, guys, if this isn't worth a like and subscribe, I don't know what is. The footage corrupted of me painting the next step on the miniature I set out to do. So I've been out, I've primed another one, I've got it to the stage I was at. I'm going to show you how I'm painting up the silver metals. This is using another contrast paint. This is Basilicanum grey, just a dark grey, or well, just the grey, I think, in the contrast range. And that's going to work really, really, really well again with that silver primer we put underneath. So we're going to find all the bits of silver essentially on these miniatures and add this contrast on top. Now we're going to do the blade here as well on the spear, and it came out super well, as you'll see in a little bit when we get back to painting the alpha. You'll see that this has come out really well. And what I did was apply a very even coat to the blade, so it's very important to sort of pull it on, spread it evenly across the blade, try and remove any pools from the actual spiky bits, something like that, and let's hope that dries as nicely as it does on the alpha. As well as the spear, so this spiky bit here in the blade, we're going to go and do their chainmail. I'm going to be painting all of my Vindictors in the exact same way. This is now my third one that I'll have completed, and I'm really digging how it's coming out. So he's got chainmail on the back as well, as they all do, and we'll just do a nice heavy one single thick coat across the chainmail and let that dry. So I've finished abusing that silver primer with the contrast paints now. Done all the metallics. Quick and easy, guys. These metallics, I'm really liking how I've got them. And we're talking 3, 4, 5 minutes tops work. And we've done the majority of the miniature. And I think it just looks outstanding for how few minutes we've put into it. But as I mentioned, we're now done with that silver primer. So we're going to start painting over what's left, or at least the bits that will matter, using Army Painter's Crushed Skull. Basically, we just need something like Wraith Bone, a very light, pale. I'm going to go with off-white. You could use white if you want your colours to be super bold and stand out. So I'm going to use a couple more contrast paints, but I need to take off that silver primer because it's going to make them all look metallic otherwise. So I'm going to be applying that to this little lady's flume. I guess that's the word on a helmet. Just a rough coat, like don't need to be super neat, just thin enough that it paints on super easy, but enough that really I just want to take out the shine of the silver. I don't even mind that it's like a light grey colour, that's fine for what I want the contrast paints to do. I'm also going to be applying a little bit of contrast to these clips, belts, whatever these are, straps I guess is a good word, on her boots, just holding those on. And it will be the same contrast I apply to these belts that are holding up her pants, up her skirt, and her sword as well down here. So I just make sure I give these a little coat. Speaking of her sword, I will be giving that a lick of paint. So we'll just take out that silver here as well. I'm also going to be applying some contrast quickly to the backs of her two knees. That again needs the silver taking out. You can get both sides. I'm going to be doing the same on her armpits up here, elbow bits. I think these are cloth, aren't they? So I'm going to paint them up as though they're some sort of material. Don't forget it's kind of matching on the other side of her arm too. I'll be doing the strap on her shield as well, this bit around her wrist. I'll also be doing the handle, the shaft of her sword here. So we'll just give that a thin coat too. And with the same contrast, I'll make her spear match as well. So I'll be getting the shaft, the holdy bit of all of her spear as well. I'll just show you a little bit on camera. But yeah, just lightening this up, taking that silver off. So we're going to be able to easy peasy contrast over this. These are the last bits I think we can contrast up. While I've got this paint out, I'm just going to paint on a proper coat of this on her, what would you call this? It's kind of like a flag, isn't it? But this is going to want to be basically this colour. I'm probably going to lighten it up with some white paint as well. But we'll start with a base coat of this to make it a lot easier to paint over. So that bit was a little bit time consuming, but it still didn't take long. Just get rid of that primer. And we're back with that Basilicum grey, and we're going to be painting in all of the flexible parts of her armour. So that's the back of her knees, the back of her arms, her armpits, and her elbows as well as a whole bunch of little flexible bits between her armour. Now, I haven't fully assembled my miniature yet. I've not glued the arms on, or the shield to the arm actually, which means I can still detach it, which is going to make this bit exponentially easier to do. I can just pick up her arms now and simply add a bit of this contrast paint in those holes without having to reach around the rest of the miniature. Now, I did super consider doing this in SHYISH purple, and you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to go on to do a lot of the rest of the miniature, I say a lot, I'm going to do some more of the contrast parts that I'm going to paint up in SHYISH purple. And yeah, I seriously consider doing these flexible bits. You might want to do that. It just ties it in. I think it might add a nice, like, an extra part that's purple and tie these bits in a little bit better together, but it might also be a bit too much purple. I've gone with grey. By all means, go with a different colour if you want. Speaking of that SHYISH purple, let's apply some now. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be applying this to some of the smaller details, and I think you could use basilicum, that's a hard word to say, grey, but I've gone for purple on these bits. Just adds a little bit of different colour to the miniature, a little bit more interest in the details, and it lets me use purple, which I don't use that often. So I am going to use this for all of her belts, the straps holding up her sword, the sheath for her sword as well. Ooh, put quite a lot on this. I was going for quite a thin coat before. I guess we'll go for one thick coat on this bit, which is annoying because this is quite smooth and flat. I'd build it up. I'd go small and add more if you need it. Also do the handle for her sword as well in the same purple. Now, this will take a little bit of care, but I'm going to get these straps on her boots as well. Just a little dab front and back of them. Try not to catch any of the armour like I just did then, but if you do, just flood the area. Get some water on your brush. Make it super wet around there and try and wipe and wash that away. Straps on the other side too. She's also got this strap on her armour up here. Again, it's the front and back I'll be catching. I'm also going to add SHYISH purple to the strap that she's got on her wrist for the shield she's holding. And last but not least, I'm going to do the entire shaft, the holdy bit at least, of her spear. I'm tying this in with the handle on her blade as well. Just flipping over that staff, I remembered spear, that she's also got these straps underneath, so we'll get those in the same SHYISH purple. Tying those in with her belt and the straps holding up her sword. This last bit that I'm going to do in the purple, I don't think matters really what colour it is as long as it's dark, but I'm going to use it to fill in the text that's on her flag, her banner, just to contrast that brightly or extremely with the lightness that I will do the flag. Well, I hope this is coming across well on the video, but this is going remarkably first easily and good. Like, I'm whizzing through this miniature and I think it's looking awesome for the amount of time I'm spending on it. For the next bit, I'm just going to add a little bit of this skeleton horde to the skull that's on the base. I'll do the basing off camera and I might do a video on the channel. There's already swamp videos on the channel. I'm just painting all of these bases up a little bit swamp-like as fast as I can to just get an army to the table. So I'm going to use a very, very small splash of APOTHECARY white on the shoulder emblem that she has that I wanted to stand out in white. From my experience painting my practice one, this is actually the hardest bit of the miniature I personally found. I couldn't get this bit looking great. So I'm going to do my last bit of contrasting paint before I move on to just painting with normal acrylic paint. For that I'm going to use GRYPH-HOUND orange, and I think this is a nice colour match to reference material in the artwork, in the war scrolls on the box to do her plume in. So it's just going to be one thick coat all over the plume, and that's it. Just leave that to dry. Once again, the footage of me painting up the prime corrupted, but I wanted to show you without spoilers, I guess, essentially. Some people might be watching this video and being excited to see what it looks like as it all comes together. So I wanted to go back to a miniature that isn't as complete and show you how I painted up all the blue parts. Now I'm using Army Painter's Deep Blue, which is quite a dark blue. And I'm going to go round and add a thin coat to all of the blue areas. That includes the shoulders and the shield primarily. Now on the Prime, I accidentally painted both of her shoulders in gold, so I needed to go and touch up the right hand shoulder and just make it blue. It was easy to paint over. It does take 2 or 3 coats. I'm applying thin layers, and painting over the shiny silver was a little bit difficult because I'm trying to remove sort of the metallic look and go for a matte finish. But yeah, 2 or 3 coats with this deep blue, and I'm going to get the blue look and feel that I'm going for, copying along with the reference material. So with 3 coats of that deep blue applied to all the blue areas I need, I'm going to add a little bit of depth using some wash. And I'm going to use Army Painter's blue tone. It's just a dark blue wash. In fact, it's not even that much darker than this deep blue. But I'm going to start on the shoulder, and I'm going to go around that emblem, just all the way around the outside to pop that out a little bit more. I'm also going to find all of the nooks and crannies, all the crevices. There's not much because it's quite flat, but all of these rivets as well. I'm just going to add a dash of that, and hopefully that'll just slurp around the outside of that and just make the rivet pop out. On the back of the shield, I'm going to do similar. I'm going to go around each of those rivets, just a dot on that, and hopefully that'll give it a nice circle of shade. And then I'll also try and get the gap between the blue and the gold. On the front of the shield, it's similar. I want to try and get around the edge between the gold and the blue, as well as carefully as I can, all the way around the lightning that I'm going to do in white. Well, that's the base coat, and the wash is now taken care of entirely. So let's move on to highlighting. We're going to start with the blue because that's what we've been touching most recently, just to finish off all of that. And we're going to use Army Painter's Crystal Blue, which is an incredibly bright, light blue. It's quite a strong contrast, but we've been using contrast paints, right? So it fits quite well. I'm going to go around and first apply this to anywhere on the shield, which really on this particular shield is just on the back. That was a bit of a slip. Let's just flood that area, clean that up. What was I saying? So yeah, really it's just these sort of rivets on the back of the shield, which you're barely going to be able to see, but we may as well do it for completeness. So just a tiny little speck on the raised bit of each rivet. I don't even know how well that comes across on camera, but it's really, really contrasty in person. I didn't realise how much less blue there is on this particular model. The banner holder had extra shoulders, and the shield, I feel like the shield had a little bit more blue to highlight up, but maybe not. So for the blue shoulder pad, I'm just going to try and edge highlight any of the sharp edges, so that top one there. Try and get down the sides as well. We'll get the forward facing under edge as well, otherwise you're probably not going to ever see it. Again, there's a whole bunch of these sorts of rivets on this shoulder pad, so I'll catch them. And we've got some wash marks here that I'm just going to clean up with that original deep blue, but I'll just do that off camera, just tidy them up, just because I don't love how that wash has sort of settled there. Just a quick clean up job, repainting in the base colour over some of it. There we go, dead simple edge highlight there. That's the blue done. A side note, if you are feeling a little bit braver, more adventurous, I did go back and do a little highlight around the edge of the blue on the front of the shield as well. A little bit trickier, it's not perfect, but from a distance it's going to look really good. You just need to take your time and have a steady hand and try not to get down the recess. Next up, I'm going to use some of Army Painter's matte white, and that's going to be to paint on some of these, what are they, like sort of lightning bolt details. So we're starting with the shield. There's quite a lot to do here. I'm kind of just going to paint this flat. There's not that much to add that much depth to using shade and stuff like that. So, and I think it's going to look great. Just paint it bright white, really pop it out. So I'm just going to take my time, try not to get any on the blue. It's probably going to take a couple of coats to build this up, but yeah, slow and steady, trying to be accurate, trying to keep my wrists locked so I'm not wobbling as much. That doesn't come across that well on camera because I'm sitting at an unnatural position, but guys, get your wrists flat to the desk, get it as steady as you can, grip it well, take your time, paint straight lines, and this is going to come up looking fantastic. I'm also going to paint this lightning bolt on the shoulder pad in white as well. And while we're at the shoulder pad, I'm going to try and highlight up this emblem a little bit. As I mentioned, this was the single hardest bit for me on my test model. I'm kind of going to try and edge highlight around the outside a little bit, and kind of try and dry brush this on top. But I just didn't do a good job before. I'm not doing an amazing job this time. Just try and catch some of the raised bits. You know, it's a small amount of detail. It's gonna get by. There's nothing I can say or do that will help you paint your one any better. Just let you know that this is by far the hardest bit for me, but you know, you get the gist. For my final bit of white highlighting, I'm just gonna dry brush on, or it's kind of over brushing. There's quite a lot on this dry brush right now, but some white onto this flag, this banner, this symbol. Just want to brighten it up and get it looking whiter. Trying to be extra careful around where I've painted in those runes or letters or symbols or whatever they are. Yeah, just catching this, brightening that back up on sort of the edges, but especially down the top and the bottom. I'm going to do this 2 or 3 times until I get it as white as I want it to look. For my final pass of highlighting, I'm going to highlight all the metallics. I'm going to do it in the same way, gold or silver. I'm going to use Army Painter's Claymore blade. Now, I've been manhandling this quite a lot while I was painting, and it's actually had a side effect of very naturally highlighting some of this up. It's taken off some of that yellow contrast paint in various places and added a bit of a kind of edge highlight, but where it hasn't done it, I'm going to go manually add in some edge highlights. So I'm going to start with the gold. I'm going to start on this shoulder with this tiger on it, and I'm just going to highlight up the odd bit and piece where, you know, the metal would have been tarnished over time, taking some beatings, some batterings, that sort of thing, but also just where light would be naturally catching it. And I find silver just is a really strong highlight for gold, and as I've painted most of it, as I've already mentioned, with contrast paint, it's very contrasting anyway, so I think this is working remarkably well. Just a final pass on this bottom of the shoulder pad, this sharp edge. Then we'll move on to his elbow pad, just a few defining lines really, just on all of the 90-degree-ish bends. His wrist guard here too, like so, and then we'll just dab on these rivets, just a tiny dot like we did with the blue, just a tiny little speck of shine on the end of the rivets. Again, actually just realised this is now where his shield's going to go. You're not going to see any of that, but we're going to know. We're going to know, guys. But something like that. Now we can work on that and see how it looks once it's built together, but I'm liking that's look. Look, it looks all shiny and metal. For the shield, it's going to be similar work on the face of this. Who is this person? To be honest, you might want to dry brush this on. I personally don't love how dry brushed metallics come out. It does come out quite often sort of ultra realistic. It's going to make it look a lot duller when you're dry brushing silver over gold. It's going to make it look a lot more like antique-y or certainly aged. And if that's the look you'd like, by all means do that. It's not a bad look. It's just a very different look to this. This looks very almost clean, very bright still, even though it's got some sorts of, you know, a bit of rubbing, lost a bit of its shiny goldness, but it's shiny silver instead. Whereas, yeah, a bit of dry brushing is very different. It's going to dull it down. It's still going to look metallic, but it's going to look like what I would describe as sort of aged. So a little bit of highlighting on on the gold there on the face, and then the rest of the shield's super easy. We're just going to get some on the brush, wipe some of it off. So you've got a nice layer, and then we're going to use the side of the brush and simply edge highlight all the way around this raised part of the shield. Very, very easy bit to do. Once again, the top of the shield has got some natural tarnishing on it, just where I've been holding the shield at the top and the bottom, and I've taken off a little bit of that yellow paint, which has revealed the silver primer underneath. So ultra realistic to some degree. If you wanted to make it super realistic, just handle the stuff for long enough that you'll take off all of the yellow paint off of the edges. And once again with the shield, let's just dab on a little bit on each of these rivets. We'll then go around and apply those edge highlights, silver touch-up highlights, tarnishings, detailing, whatever we want to call it, to the remainder of her armour. I keep saying his. This is a lady. She is female. And don't forget the silver can also be highlighted in this if you would like. Not sure I want to even touch that blade. It looks really clean and crisp to me. I managed to get that contrast to flood perfectly. No dodgy pooling. But I will just highlight up the edge of the blade so when you see it side on, it looks shiny as anything. Same as any of the metallics on the actual stave, the staff part. I think I'm just going to highlight up each of the spikes. Maybe a little bit on this detail here. Don't forget to get both sides of the spikes. It looks nice and shiny from either side. And yeah, I'll go and edge highlight around all of her armour. So this is edge highlighting up well, moving up her body. I just realised there's all of these scales as well, and I'm going to do a generous edge highlight. I'm going to paint back in sort of the bottom 60 maybe %, just adding a lot of shine individually to each one of these scales on this silver armour, really popping them back out. Very, very metallic looking again, aren't they? So that's looking baller. So far I've done her legs. As I said, it's all just a lot of slow, steady. Well, it's not really that slow. It's quite quick actually. Quick, inaccurate edge highlighting. I think there's enough of it. It doesn't need to be super accurate. It all looks pretty good no matter where I'm catching, no matter how much I'm catching as well, just because there's sort of more shine in places or more wear and tear. So obviously you could get a really, really nice sort of heavy metal look if you wanted to just very cleanly and carefully highlight up each edge perfectly. That's up to you. I mean, you're going to get what you put into it. Depends how amazing you want it to look, or whether you're going to be happy with the speed at which you paint, which I often am. On with her face, and nothing's really changing. I'm going to edge highlight her nose, just a little bit above her eyes. I'm going to get these spikes, top of her plume, more spikes, and then finally just the front of, I don't know what this is, this kind of halo piece. So I think I'm about there with how I want this Stormcast Eternal to look. I think it's pretty good for 30-ish minutes of work. The final little bit I'm going to add is she's got these kind of gems on her body, one on her head, one on her shield, and one on that emblem on her shoulder. And I'm just going to paint those using Blood Angel's red. It's contrast paint, and it's going to go on top of those paints and just make it like a little bit like a red gem. Just enough, a very quick bit of detail, but just to add a little bit of detail, a little bit more detail to this miniature. And that is it, guys. What an absolute blast to paint that miniature, guys. I've been dreading that for a long time. I thought that was going to be incredibly difficult, and it was probably harder than the orc so far, but that undercoat, that prime of the silver followed by that contrast paint, just got that gold done so quickly. Now I think this probably took me about 25-30 minutes, not including the base. I did go and do that base off camera and spent some time on it, probably a lot more than the actual paint job. But guys, don't worry, you know it's not a competition, you're not competing. I personally like to get in there as fast as I can, get miniatures to the table, bish bash bosh, smash out a quick paint job. But it's not all about speed. Sometimes you just got to enjoy yourself, take your time. I sound awfully like my wife right now. It's not all about speed painting. But if you do like speed painting like myself, hopefully this gives you some hints and tips in how you can save a little bit of time painting up this what are they called? Vindictor. I'm pretty sure throughout the whole video I keep calling this a Vindicator. While you're here, guys, I'll just show you the other Vindictor that I painted. I did this one off camera, but I did it in the exact same way as I've shown you in this video. I just wanted to practice one because I'd never speed painted metallics before. It's pretty much exactly the same. I did the base slightly different. It's still another swamp base. I'm doing all of my Dominion miniatures with a swamp base, all themed together. Mike did an awesome tutorial last week on painting swamp bases. If you've not seen that, do check that out on the channel. There's also a bunch of speed painting videos for this Dominion box set that you can look at if you've not already seen. And let us know in the comments below. First of all, what did you think of speed painting gold? Because that was new to me and I'm pretty excited by it. But also, what would you like to see painted on the channel next? Guys, thank you ever so much for watching. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Speaking of Flood. I would try and do the contrast in blah, 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 blah. While we are here, guys, I will just show you the other Vindicate. Freaking hell, what are they called? I will just show you the other Vindicate. Oh, my lord.